Welcome back. We're talking about solving proportions. Again, something that should be a little bit of a review, but based on what I've heard from you in the classroom, a lot of this you either don't remember or you didn't see last year. For the most part, I'm guessing it's that you don't remember it because I was a big part of your 6th grade teacher's lessons in how they taught you to do some of these things. So I know most of you have seen this before. It's just been a while, and we want to review how to solve proportions. The first hint here at the top, there's a couple of blanks to fill in. It says to always keep blank blank across from each other. What we always want to keep across from each other in our proportions are numbers with the same units. So always keep same units across from each other when you're setting up your proportion. That means that if I have inches on top on the left and on the bottom I have hours, inches over hours, on the other side of my proportion I need to also have inches on top and hours on the bottom. That's one of the most common mistakes made when you're setting up your proportions is you're putting the different units in different places. So inches on top, hours on bottom, hours on bottom. I can do it the other way around. I can put hours on top and inches on bottom as long as I do it on both sides. Okay, so here's an example of a pretty common problem that you'll see. X over 6 is equal to 15 over 2. So we have one ratio on the left and another ratio on the right. They're written in fraction form, and it wants to know what would X be so that these two are equal to each other. That's all we're trying to figure out is what would X be so that the left side is equal to the right side. So really all we're trying to do is solve for X. So the steps to do this here, if the proportions are not set up as fractions, set them up in fraction form. That just means if it gives it to you in a word sentence, change it and write them as fractions. So if it tells you 3 feet to 8 hours, you want to write that 3 over 8. Okay? Luckily, the example that I give you here is already set up in the form that we want, and a lot of times it will be. So number 2, find the blank blank and set them blank to each other. Again, this kind of goes back to our fraction form. We're finding the fraction form. Find the fraction form and set them equal to each other. Find the fraction form and set them equal to each other. Again, in our example, it's already in fraction form and they're already equal to each other. What this might have been like if it was a story problem, X over 6 equals 15 over 2, it might have said something like, if it rains 15 inches in 2 hours, how many inches does it rain in 6 hours? So it might have given it to us like this. If it rains 15 inches in 2 hours, so we set that up as a ratio in fraction form, 15 inches over hours. How many inches, that's what we're looking for, X is the inches, does it rain in 6 hours? So we put the hours on the bottom because the hours are on the bottom over here. So number 3 says you now have a proportion. We now have a proportion, and all we have to do is solve. The first thing it says here, number 4, if we need to, we can simplify, which really isn't going to happen a lot this year. Most of them are going to be given to you in simplest form already. And 15 over 2, that doesn't simplify, so we can leave that. X over 6, obviously that doesn't simplify because we have no idea what X is. So number 5, all we have to do is solve for the variable. Solve for the variable. So we need to figure out what X is. We're going to solve for the variable. So I'm going to rewrite this problem right here. X over 6 equals 15 over 2. And I'm doing that just so I have a little bit more room to work. To solve for the variable, I just do my railroad tracks. And on this side, I've got x divided. Remember, this means divided by 6. X divided by 6. To undo dividing by 6, I want to multiply by 6 over here and multiply by 6 on the right-hand side. So on the left-hand side, that goes away, and I have x equals 15 halves times 6. So in my calculator, I'm going to put 15 halves times 6 equals 45. X is equal to 45. So I've solved for x. That means that my proportion looks like 45 over 6 is equal to 15 over 2. Which makes sense because in 2 hours, if it rains 15 inches, means that in 4 hours, it's rained 30 inches. And 2 more hours later is just another 15 inches, so that becomes 45. So I feel pretty confident with our answer. We can plug it back in and check our work. We can say that 45 over 6, and we want to see if that's equal to 15 over 2. And we should know that it is because we're the ones that found the 45 to make it equal. But let's double check. Let's do 45 over 6. That equals 15 over 2. So those two are actually the same. So I'm confident that x is equal to 45. And that's solving a proportion. All we're doing is setting up the proportion, which is usually the hardest part, and then we're solving it the way we've solved problems all years long. Okay, so really quick, we're going to go through 5 examples, kind of show you what this looks like. So number 1 says, if 3 books take up 4 inches on a shelf, how much space is needed for 26 books? So these obviously aren't set up in fraction form yet. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say 3 books on top takes up 4 inches on the bottom. So on the left-hand side, I've got books on top, and on the bottom I have inches. And I'm going to write that out over there just so that I remember. I've got books on top, inches on the bottom. And I'm going to set up my proportion. How much space is needed? Well, is that books or inches? I think that's inches on the bottom. I'm looking for how much space is needed for 26 books. And I'm going to put that right there on top. So I have my proportion, 3 books in 4 inches, means that for 26 books, I need how many inches? Now, the only thing I don't like about my proportion is that x is on the bottom. And I don't like x being on the bottom when I try to solve these. So instead of writing it as books over inches, I'm going to change it. I'm going to put inches on top and books on bottom, which really just means I'm going to take my fractions on both sides and I'm going to flip them over. So instead of 3 books in 4 inches, I'm going to rewrite that as 4 inches for 3 books equals, since I flipped this side over, I'm going to flip this side over. That equals x inches for 26 books. And here's why I did that. Now when I set up my railroad tracks, it's a lot easier for me to solve for x because it's on top, and it's just being divided by 26. So all I have to do is times by 26 to get that to go away, which means this side needs to be multiplied by 26. So in my calculator, I'll do 26 times 4/3, and that's equal to 104 thirds. So this becomes 104 thirds equals x. And I like that number, 104 thirds, that's a perfect number. But in decimal form, just to give you some perspective, that's like saying that I need 34.666 inches. So I could say, or I need 34.6 repeating inches of space. Either one of those are the same thing. I like them. Okay, so number 2. It's already set up as a proportion. It's already simplified. 3 over 10 doesn't simplify. X over 40 doesn't simplify. So I'm just going to draw my railroad tracks. And right now I'm dividing by 40. So to get rid of that, I need to multiply by 40. which means this side needs to multiply by 40. So over here I'm left with x equals 3/10 times 40 is 12. So x is equal to 12. And I can plug that in and do 12 divided by 40 and see if that's equal to 3/10. So let's check our work. Let's see if 12/40 is equal to 3/10. So I'm going to plug that in, 12/40. And when I hit enter, it simplifies it to 3/10. So I'm pretty confident that that answer is correct. All right, so let's look at number 3. K/6 equals 8/16. So I'm going to draw my railroad tracks. And right now, K is being divided by 6, and 8 is being divided by 16. Now, before I solve this, I think I can simplify. I think I can simplify 8/16 a little bit, because 8 goes into 8 and into 16. So instead of 8/16, that just simplifies to 1/2. So I'm going to completely scribble that out. K/6 equals 1/2. So now all I have to do is multiply both sides by 6. So K is equal to 1/2 of 6 is 3. I'm not even going to plug that one in my calculator. 1/2 is the same thing as 3/6. That one, I'm not even going to check my work either. I'm pretty good at 1/2s, and I know that 3/6 is the same thing as a half, so I'm pretty confident in that answer. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to number 4. 2x/5 is equal to 9/15. So we're going to want to solve this, but again, following our steps. It's already set up in fraction form. We have a proportion, but we haven't simplified yet. And 9/15 does simplify. 3 goes into both of them. So 3 goes into 9 3 times, and 3 goes into 15 5 times. So instead of 9/15, I'm going to change it to 3/5. And now I'm going to start solving. This is a little bit more complicated because it's a two-step problem. So 2x is what's grouped together, and I'm dividing by 5. So the inverse of dividing by 5 is multiply by 5. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 5. That goes away. I'm left with 2x equals 3/5 times 5. You can go ahead and plug that in your calculator, and you're going to get 3. Because that's kind of like saying 3 divided by 5 times 5, and those two just undo each other. So 2x is equal to 3. Now I've got 2 times x. To undo that, I need to divide by 2, which means this side I need to divide by 2. So x is equal to 3 divided by 2, 3/2, or if I want to turn that into a decimal, that's 1.5. That's an ugly 1.5. Or that's 1.5. Either of those is correct. And if I were you, I would plug that back in and see if you get the right answer. Okay, 1.5 times 2 is 3/5 is the same as 3/5. So we feel good about that one. Number 5, we've got fraction form on both sides. We have a proportion. 5 and 2 don't really simplify. So I think I'm ready to go ahead and solve this one. D minus 2 is a group. So I'm going to circle that, and I have to undo the divide by 4 first. So I need to multiply both sides by 4. So over here those go away, and I'm left with D minus 2 equals 4 times 5/2. 4 times 5/2 becomes 10. So on this side, whoops, let me show you that. 4 times 5/2 is equal to 10. All right, so over on the left side, I'm left with 10. Now I've got D minus 2. The inverse of minusing 2 is to plus 2, which I need to do to both sides. Those go away. 10 plus 2 is 12, and that's equal to D. And if I plug that back in, 12 minus 2 is 10 divided by 4. That simplifies to 5/2, which is the same as my left-hand side. So I'm pretty confident that that answer is correct. So that's solving proportions. Really, you're just solving more one-step and two-step equations. Again, the hardest part is usually setting up the proportion. Today, most of the proportions will be set up for you. You just need to practice solving for that missing piece. So go ahead, pause the video, try these 5 problems. When you get it done, bring it up, come see me. Let's make sure that you're doing things correctly, you're not making mistakes. As long as things look good, I'll let you get on to the practice and try some of this on your own. Good luck.